This beautifully gnarled yet graceful trunk, this beautiful weeping foliage, and these distinctive red berries, this can only be California's very own Peruvian pepper tree. The Schinus molle, or Peruvian pepper tree, is actually not a California native, but in fact, its origin story here in California is very well known. The first of California's pepper trees arrived in the pocket of a sea captain around the year 1830 near Oceanside, California. The sea captain was staying as a guest at Mission San Luis Rey. In thanks for the hospitality that was shown to him, he presented the friars with a handful of these berries. These berries were actually seeds, the seeds for this tree. And in fact, the first pepper tree that ever grew from those seeds still resides there today on the grounds of Mission San Luis Rey in Oceanside, nearly 200 years later. Now this specimen here is probably more like 100 to 125 years old. And this tree would have been planted possibly as a street tree here when the street was laid out in the 1880s, certainly by the time Prospect Park became a park in 1897. So these trees can live a very long time. But these trees hold the distinction of basically being California's first street tree. This tree being planted as a street tree is nothing new in California. In fact, by the time 1850 rolls around, the Workman and the Temple families of Los Angeles had already launched a nursery to cultivate Peruvian pepper trees as street trees to go along the streets of the burgeoning Pueblo down there. In fact, many Southern California cities followed suit, and soon they became an iconic part of the view and vista of Californian urban landscapes. You see them planted on ranchos and in open land, but frequently you see images, especially in the latter part of the 19th century, of streets lined on both sides with these beautiful, graceful, weeping trees. Now, what happened to them all? In the 1950s, there was an invasive fungus that spread through California. This fungus attacked particularly our Peruvian pepper tree stock, and many of them became diseased. That's where these urban legends came about pepper trees being susceptible to dropping limbs. In fact, it was these diseased trees that were sick, and any tree that's sick or dying has a tendency to drop limbs. In fact, even if a tree has not been pruned properly, there is an increased tendency for that, because when you prune, you're wounding the tree. There's a right way and a wrong way to do it. So in fact, many of these trees and these pepper-lined avenues disappeared from sight, but you do still see in some locations specimens that have stood the test of time with loving care from their communities. So for those of you familiar with the Old Town Orange Plaza down in Orange, California, in fact, these were the first street trees planted in the new plaza when Glassell and Chapman laid out the town and decided to advertise for lots. In fact, that plaza was originally a horse watering station, and there's a fountain there today. The connection to that plaza and water is a very long history, and the pepper plays a part, because if you're trying to tell people that this is good land, you have access to water, the very first thing you're going to do is want to show people what can grow on the spot. And very quickly, the California pepper tree, or the Peruvian pepper tree, became a signal of water in Old Town Orange. Now, some fun botanical facts about the Peruvian pepper tree. So, like in its common name, you have the sense it comes from Peru, in fact. It comes from the southern hemisphere. And the indigenous populations that lived near the native populations of this tree actually used to make a beer out of these seed pods, these berries, the red and white ones you see in my hand. These are not actually, in fact, peppercorns. Common misconception. The genus that contains the pepper tree, Schinus, is nowhere closely related to the pepper genus that grows in tropical parts of the world that gives us the pepper you see on our table. The common name actually just alludes to the fact that their berries sort of look like pepper, but nevertheless, they are beautiful and a really distinctive part of the look of this tree. You know, you can find dried berries here on the ground all around the tree. They'd make a lovely addition to a holiday table centerpiece, sort of scattered there with your other sorts of greenery. As you can see, at 100 or 125 years of age, this tree does very well along streets and avenues. It's more compact than a live oak tree, and its roots are less sensitive to trampling. You also can see it's a lovely shade tree, and it is, one of California's evergreens. So all through the year, you have this lovely weeping green foliage. All it needs is just a little proper TLC. This is JP from OCB, and let's keep it zesty.